This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for bearing with us as fall camp hit hard over the past week, but we've got a ton to talk about as the Mustangs are back on the practice field. And it is that time of year where football is certainly taking center stage, but recruiting never sleeps as well. We'll touch on a couple things toward the end of the podcast on the recruiting front. But first, we are presented by our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. I was just talking with David Henry and his team over there at StatusJet, and they finally have full pricing estimates for the 2024 SMU football season for you, 6 friends around that to go to every single away game. We're going to post it at ontheponyexpress.com, and we'll also talk about it on the podcast so you can start making your plans. You look ahead to Reno, Nevada, SMU season opener, week 0, August 24th, night game out there. It's going to cost you, for the On the Pony Express rate, roughly $35 to $45K for 6 people, which, look, a lot of money, but to go in, to go out in private jet style is expensive. You're certainly paying for the first-class service that StatusJet and his team provide. They are preliminary estimates depending on what size plane, availability, current fuel costs, and things like that. So keep that in mind. But that does kind of give you an idea of what it could take to have the trip of a lifetime. You could go out to Lake Tahoe. You could go out and catch the Mustangs play Nevada. And you could do it at a premium cost, but with, of course, a level of luxury that you come to expect with our friends at statusjet.com. So tell them that ontheponyexpress.com sent you. Mention code PONYUP ACC for that discount and have the conversation with them. That's one thing David mentioned to me. We have a few On the Pony Express subscribers that are talking with them now about their options for the full football season and business trips and things like that. So all it takes is a conversation to see if it's worth it for you. And if you can tie it into business, maybe it's a write-off for you. So reach out to our friends at StatusJet today. SMU football is a week into fall camp. We're recording this on Wednesday as the Mustangs are now a week in. They started last week. They had ACC Media Day, and then they came back, and boom, they were meeting as a team Tuesday evening and getting into the swing of things for fall camp. Last week, SMU was in helmets and shorts and T-shirts, getting used to running around back out there on the practice field, kind of early walkthrough stuff with the installs going in, and then they put on shells on Friday, and then we're in full pads, and now we're into the swing of fall camp. And I tell you what, we'll go through some of the takeaways. We've had a lot of coverage at ontheponyexpress.com. If you're a YouTube follower of ours, you've seen the practice clips, you've seen a lot of the interviews with the coaching staff and players. It's a feeling that is much different than last year. Last year was a lot of, okay, can SMU do this? Can they take the next step in their journey, so to speak, as a program under Rhett Lashley? Or were they going to be a team that fell short of expectations? And, well, they obviously achieved the expectations that were laid out in front of them to be in the mix for a conference championship, to win a conference like they did in the AAC. Now they're moving up a weight class, as they talked about it at ACC Media Day. They know they've gone from kind of the lightweight, middleweight to the heavyweights, and that is really what has kind of driven a lot of the storylines around fall camp early on for SMU. The coaches, the players, all being motivated by this step up in competition for this SMU team. They can't just sit around and say, well, we added more talent. We've got an experienced quarterback or two coming back into the fold. We've got pretty much the whole coaching staff back, a lot of familiar faces, some new talent. We're just going to go out and run the world in the AAC again. They're stepping up. They're creating a new dynamic in this program, which is how to navigate the Power 5, Power 4 schedule that they're going to face in the ACC. And there's still confidence. There's a lot of that in fall camp because this team is deep. They do have a lot of key players back and added some really impressive talent. We're going to dive into that a little bit as we share our early takeaways of fall camp. And early on, it was SMU getting out into shells and kind of moving around out there. But the big thing that stood out right away is this defensive front. And you talk about having Elijah Roberts back in the fold and his size, his ability to run in space, as you saw if you're watching on YouTube, and the entire defensive line's ability to control what the offensive line does is really impressive. And we know that Justin Osborne has a lot of expectations on him as a starting center. We know there are some big name transfers and big name players that are back for SMU on the offensive line. But the reality is this defensive line goes 3 deep. And last year we were in fall camp watching SMU and saying, okay, is the offensive line going to be this massive issue? No, that was the defensive line being that good early on in fall camp and really stepping up. And that carried the season, right? That was SMU's calling card and really shown in the AAC championship game just how impressive they were in dominating Michael Pratt and that Tulane offense. Now, things change quickly in this sport with the transfer portal. And what SMU did was they went out and just addressed the defensive line even more so than they did last year preparing for the 2023 season. They went out and they grabbed Jared Harrison Hunt at the end of the transfer portal season. They went out and brought in Blake Burris this summer, and he, committed earlier but got to campus this summer. And they have so many big, strong guys on that defensive line. Jonathan Jefferson, Omari Abor on the edge. They were able to go out and grab Jafari Harvey, who was here in the spring, and add a talented player like Billy Walton, who's young, who's got athleticism, Mike Lockhart, Tank Booker, so many just big name transfers from power conference schools that, again, have really reshaped how you've got to view this defensive line, even though that last year they were a strength of the team. Last year they were able to control the line of scrimmage. But with these big guys up front, SMU is ready for the Power 4 ranks. And that is going to be a unit that keeps SMU in games this fall and is able to get them to a point where they don't necessarily need to rely on the glaring, I would say, question mark of this defense, which is your cornerback room, because they're going to be able to control the line of scrimmage for the most part. Now, they're going to face Florida State. They're going to face Louisville. They're going to face some teams with some quality offensive linemen. There's no question about that. But what SMU has is depth and talent. And if you're a premium On3 YouTube or On the Pony Express YouTube subscriber, or if you are at ontheponyexpress.com, we'll break down the depth chart, our early projections for that, and share some notes. But it's almost incomplete because I try to go through it 2 deep just to give you guys an idea of what to expect from SMU's position groups, where they stand. This defensive line is really 3 deep, and you go across the board. Elijah Roberts is the star at strong side defensive end. You also have Omari Abor, David Abiara. And if you're an On the Pony Express subscriber, you knew that SMU was moving Cam Robertson over from Bandit to play more strong side defensive end. So all of a sudden, they have 3 or 4 guys there that they feel really good about. Tank Booker, as you're watching on the screen there, he just did a rep early on in fall camp. He is your nose tackle, big, strong guy with Jonathan Jefferson right behind him. Blake Burris, who's going to play some special teams for SMU as well. But all 3 of those guys, big, strong players. And then you get into Jared Harrison Hunt, who I would expect to be your starting 3 tech at the defensive tackle spot. And then you have Mike Lockhart. You have Corey Roberson. You just have so many faces to this defense that, I mean, those 3 guys that are hand in the dirt players at all times, SMU's just got so much depth. It's scary, quite honestly. And so they really have revamped that group well, and it takes an NIL commitment. So that is something that SMU's been able to really step up and do, and it's going to pay off. Jafari Harvey at the bandit spot, him and Isaiah Smith look great in practice, and then you have Billy Walton looking like a future piece that they picked up in the transfer portal. That's really, really nice. So a lot of good has come from SMU's work in the transfer portal, and I feel really good about this defense and what they're going to be able to do because they have so much depth on that defensive line. Quite frankly, it's sick, and they deserve the first 10 minutes, 8 minutes with the ad read taken out of this podcast. That's how good they've been. When you continue on the defense, it is the group that I just feel like they have so much to offer to this team this year. They're a confident group. We got to talk with Maurice Crum, the co-defensive coordinator, today, and two of his linebackers, Kobe Wilson and Ahmad Walker, and they were talking to us about, last year they were an unknown. They were really a group that had a lot of new faces. The storyline was Ahmad Walker being, Scott Simon's former middle linebacker, and he had, jump-started his career early on as a freshman, and Jaquanis Burns, could he pan out? And Kobe Wilson was kind of tossed in late in the transfer portal season. Alex Kilgore was a promising freshman. They went out and shattered all expectations for that group last year. And sure, it helps having a nice defensive line to play behind, but they are a strong point of this defense this year. They have two guys that they really trust in Kobe Wilson and Ahmad Walker, who, as Maurice Crum puts it, they both have boulders on their shoulders. And I think that mindset goes a long way for this team. We were talking with, Jonathan McGill and Isaiah Wacobia, and so many of these leaders of this team throughout fall camp have talked about how they have to raise their level of expectations and raise the standard. That's their phrase this year for the team, is raise it. And that's something that I think fits this season perfectly for SMU, because if they go out and have a good season and they win 9+ games, it's going to be because they raised the standard of play. They raised the expectations around the program, and the guys bought in. And again, there are things that this team will have to figure out, but the defense has really bought into, okay, great season last year. One, they really take the mindset of their coach, Scott Simons, on their defense coordinator. They're never really satisfied. I'm sure they celebrated a little bit after the AAC championship game, but there wasn't too much time to look back and say, wow, oh my gosh, look at what SMU's defense did, and revamped the perception of SMU as this offensive school that's produced playmakers through the years. Now they have depth, they have talent, and they have skins on the wall to show that they're one of the best defenses in college football. Scott Simons is one of the best defensive coordinators in college football. There's a reason why he was mentioned with numerous defensive coordinator openings over the course of the offseason. But he wants to be at SMU, and he wants to make this defense, once again, take the next step, because I'm sure Scott Simons has head coach aspirations. Pretty much every coach I know in America wants to have a head job. And if Scott Simons is going to get there one day, making it work at the ACC level is going to accelerate that. And so SMU, you got to enjoy the ride that is the Scott Simons defense as he's here. And he has a group that is just really motivated, once again, to prove people wrong, to carry this team. And the secondary, I think, is really not a question at the safety position. A very, very good group that is coming back for SMU, but they do have some players that are certainly going to need to step up. There's no doubt about that at the corner position. And as you're watching one-on-ones, there is right off the bat a couple young players getting some work in there by some veteran receivers, but it's a group that has a lot of talent, has a lot of experience still. And one thing SMU did to help that secondary is they moved Brandon Crosley over to cornerback, and he is super competitive. He is one of the top players at SMU in terms of talking trash and bringing it every day. And I think that's important for people to realize too, is that SMU did a nice job creating depth, creating competition. They brought in Alex Rogers and they brought in Speedy Nettles this offseason as two freshmen that are going to continue to get better and potentially, especially with Speedy with his size, play. But the biggest thing that happened this offseason is it seems like Deuce Harmon really stepped up to the plate. And we talked with Ricky Hundley on, I want to say, Monday at his media availability. And he spoke about that and kind of buying in and being up to the standard that they have as far as being a teammate and being accountable. And you factor in Deuce Harmon along with a veteran like Jahari Rogers and two hungry guys in Smoke, Jalen Davis Robinson, for those who don't know, and AJ Davis. And this cornerback room, when you add in Brandon Crosley, all of a sudden has a lot of competition, needs to put its own skins on the wall like the linebacker group did last year. But they're feeling better about the unit, I would say, than before fall camp started. This was a group that they were going out and trying to find new players to bring in for the transfer portal. They couldn't end up finding anyone just yet to get into the mix that they really felt comfortable adding into this defensive, room, this cornerback room that wouldn't, upset the culture that is there. Because you look out there on day one, Jahari Rogers is coaching up Speedy Nettles and Alex Rogers on how to do drills and how to do it the right way. And that's what good teammates do, is they help each other. And now that doesn't mean that Jahari Rogers can go out there and help Speedy Nettles break up passes and play with good technique. But that's the level of buy-in that Ricky Hundley was talking about that SMU has defensively. They're able to help each other and feel better about the team's direction because they do help each other. And we've seen them steadily show why they're maybe not as big of a glaring weakness as people think. There is certainly proof that needs to be shown on the field, because you don't have Charles Woods, you don't have Chris Megginson, you don't have those two proven starters over multiple years for SMU and in college football coming in. What you have is Deuce Harmon, who started on a very good Texas A&M defense. You have Jahari Rogers, who's played a lot of football for SMU. You have Jalen Davis Robinson. You have AJ Davis. They're now veterans. I mean, they're experienced college football players. So for the secondary to take the next step is probably the biggest thing that needs to happen for SMU, quite frankly. They have to step up. But when you have a safety room that has so much depth and talent, that Scott Simons and his staff said, you know what, we're going to move Brandon Crosley over to corner because we have CJ Sanders, who we love. And if you talk with players, they're going to tell you that CJ Sanders might be the best defensive back SMU has. But he also has Jaden Milner-Jones playing right there at nickel. He has Kyron Chambers playing at nickel. Abdul Muhammad had a pick six on the first day of practice at nickel in the team period. So there's competition, there's depth. And then you have Ahmad Moses, you have Jonathan McGill, you have Isaiah Wacobia, you have all sorts of talent at the safety position. And that's a group that they needed to find ways to tweak it and help get other guys on the field. And there are guys that are proving that they deserve to be on the field, and that's what they're doing by moving a Brandon Crosley over to corner. So through the first week of practice, I tell you what, it's hard for this offense to accomplish some of the looks and feel things that they want to, because this defense is so good, and in particular the defensive line. The defense for SMU going into the season, the expectation, I would say, is top 25. They're that good, in my opinion. If the secondary is at a good spot, we're going to see this team be really, really strong defensively. And there's still going to be big plays given up here and there. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. That happens over the course of a season. I mean, we saw the Rice game not be SMU's best tackling performance. There are teams on this schedule that are certainly going to test SMU in that regard, but they have so much depth, they have so much talent, and they're a group that is, much more experienced now. It's not as much learning on the fly. Even Maurice Crum saying, Ahmad Walker was teaching him the defense last year. And so this is a much better situation for SMU. this year defensively than people give it credit for, even though SMU lost guys like Charles Woods, Chris Megginson, Elijah Chapman, Devere Levelston, and players like that. They have added so much to the cupboard for that defensive staff that you've got to feel good about it going forward. Before we jump into the offensive side of things, got to tell you guys about our friends at AKM Turf and Greens. AKM Turf and Greens just did a yard for one of our On the Pony Express subscribers who's absolutely thrilled with it. They worked quickly. They worked fast. They were able to put together a backyard that really stood out. And this isn't it, but this is another project that Alex Carpenter and his team just finished up. Backyard looked average, poor. They turned it into an incredible area to entertain. You can hang out there. There's enough space outside of the putting green to put a picnic table if they wanted to, put a tent up, and just relax with family and friends. And you see some of that turf creating that bunker feel as well. So reach out to AKM Turf and Greens today. Get $500 off your first project when you mention on theponyexpress.com or the code PONYUP. I'm telling you, they do great work. They get it done quick. And whether you're looking for a huge yard to be done with turf, or if you're just looking for a little slice of heaven to have yourself a putting green in your backyard, reach out to them today. And again, they started hot. Already one satisfied On the Pony Express subscriber in the first month. So appreciate their partnership with On the Pony Express. When we look at the defensive side, when we look at the offensive side of the ball for SMU, this is where it gets much more interesting, I would say. The overall feel on this offense in fall camp it's hard to grasp because they are having to battle against a defense that continuously puts pressure on Preston Stone, that continuously makes it difficult for them to even kind of assess things from time to time, just with the amount of talent on defense and how it stresses this offense in practice. When we get our limited viewing portion of practice, it's an adventure for this team to try and play against this talented defense, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube. And so how we have to try and interpret things is, okay, SMU has a really talented defense. They have the ability to impact the game start to finish. They really do. When they're on their game, they're going to have good days out there on defense. With SMU's offense, it's a little bit of a work in progress from the standpoint of the offensive line is finding its groove. There's no question about that. When you look at that group, they have talent. They have size, athleticism. It's a much more athletic group than I think it gets credit for, without a doubt. When you're talking about adding guys like Savion Byrd and PJ Williams on the edge versus Hiron White and Marcus Bryant last year. And then, oh, by the way, they brought in Andrew Chamblee, an all-SEC freshman, to play right tackle. You see him there on the edge there next to Ja'Kai Clark. You have Justin Osborne in the middle, super athletic, got great length. He was given a day off of practice on Wednesday as we were out there. He needed it. They don't need to find out necessarily what life is like without Justin Osborne out there on the offensive line. But with this group, they do feel like they have depth. The interesting thing is, and I think over the course of the summer, and spring as well, when looking at the portal, there was a want to grab another solid offensive tackle. And it didn't necessarily happen. They got Andrew Chamblee late, which is a 3-for-3 play, awesome addition. Even if he was pricey in terms of the market, so to speak, this is a group that if Andrew Chamblee is not ready to go for the season at some point, they have PJ Williams and Savion Byrd. You would have loved one more just from a pure, stocking the cupboard mindset of it's not enough. You just want more talent on the offensive line. And I do feel like they have the interior depth to really be strong this year and hold up against some of the challenges that the ACC is going to throw their way. I mean, I was at ACC Media Days. Florida State doesn't have small people. they have some huge dudes there in the middle of that defense, and they really are going to give SMU's offensive line everything they can handle when they come in. Joshua Farmer is a massive human being at 6'3", 318, and he is a big, strong dude there in the middle for that Florida State defense, and he had 7 tackles for loss, 5 sacks last year. He's going to be a problem for SMU's offensive line, even if Justin Osborne's there, Logan Parr is back healthy, Ja'Kai Clark's at right guard. He's played against some of these FSU guys before. They have that interior talent, though, to be very strong in the middle. And I think relative to watching SMU's defensive line against SMU's offensive line, knowing how talented that defensive line is for SMU and the depth that not only the first string for SMU has to face, but the second string and the third string, that it's going to only help them. And it's cliche, but iron sharpens iron. And that's what SMU has every day against this defensive line. And if you're looking for early bold predictions, I think the defensive line for SMU is so good, in particular along the interior, that the inside run game, once the lights come on this fall, is actually something that I'm kind of excited to see, because they just have had to face these big, strong guys in the middle. And it's not just one, the ones or the twos. It goes all the way to the threes of guys that can move around and be athletic. So I like what SMU has along the interior of the offensive line. I think that the tackle situation, PJ Williams, I think sometimes things get blown out of proportion in a way on Twitter. Well, this spring, you look back on the spring he had and some of the clips that were out there here and there. I mean, he just got some grief, and right or wrong, that's how it went for him. And he was growing into the tackle he is today. And I think he's had a terrific offseason. I was talking with a couple of sources. They're just thrilled with the development of PJ Williams. And they really feel like he's going to be a big reason why either Preston Stone or Kevin Jennings is upright and standing up throughout the season. And then the right tackle spot is Andrew Chamblee has that pretty well held down. Savion Byrd is there backing him up. That's another athletic guy who's finding his way, I think, on the tackle side of things. Garen Justice does a good job of, I think tinkering is the best word. And he even joked, during the spring that was what he was doing on purpose to have people kind of be guessing what they were going to do. And I think that's important to know when it comes to kind of watching the offensive line in fall camp. But I will say this, they have a lot of different options. And with Logan Parr still recovering from his shoulder surgery, they've had guys like Nate Anderson into the mix. They've had guys like Kayshawn Sapp come in and provide depth. They have Ja'Kai Clark at right guard. Alex Woods is playing at right guard as well. They have different options that really fit well for this offensive line. And I just think it's going to be really interesting to see how SMU ultimately settles on things when it comes to the overall just offensive line. Because at some point they're going to have to navigate some adversity with that group. It's just a position that doesn't necessarily stay healthy. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that group and see what else Garen Justice comes up with and gives his guys on their plates before they're thrust into action week 0 against Nevada. If on the defensive side of the ball, the cornerbacks are the show me group this year, I am of the opinion that the offensive line is kind of that world on the offensive side. We can talk about receivers needing to step up, but I think they would like to have a dude emerge, and it didn't happen last year. I think this year maybe it comes around. I trust the running backs enough if they're healthy to be productive and to make some plays, but you've also got to have your offensive line a part of that. And it's just a group that SMU said, okay, Branson Hickman, okay, Marcus Bryant, we're not going to necessarily come to the table and hit you with a huge NIL deal and keep you. And that's a gamble. Branson Hickman started a lot of games for SMU, and he was very good. Outperformed his recruiting ranking, which I advocated for it to be higher. Wrestling background, coach's son, super smart. I like centers that are lower to the ground and have leverage. Marcus Bryant definitely outperformed his ranking. If he was going to put on the weight, he had the athleticism to be great, and he had a chance at SMU to go down as one of the best linemen in history if he would have stayed this year. They said, you know what? We like what we have in PJ Williams a lot. We think we can make Ja'Kai Clark or Justin Osborne work at center and go out and get different guys and add them into the fold. And that's a gamble. But it's a calculated one in the sense that Justin Osborne has shown he can do whatever he wants. I mean, he at this point could run for president, and I would be like, well, he might have a shot because he's played all over the offensive line. He wears so many hats and wears them very, very well. So with him moving to center and leading that unit, they, without a doubt, upgraded the athleticism. He's been one of SMU's most reliable players over the last few years. And now that he appears to be pretty healthy, it's just a special time for him to see this final year come together the way it is for him. And not to mention, you have Ben Sparks, too, who I blanked on. That was who I was kind of trying to remember earlier. And he is factoring in nicely again after recovering from shoulder surgery. He's just a little bit ahead of Logan Parr in his recovery. So he's been back out there around Ja'Kai Clark and battling their right guard. So they have different guys that they're kind of plugging in here. And Garen Justice has options. And I think that's worth noting. I think they're going to be able to find a way to pass protect well. I think the athleticism will help there without a doubt. And just some of the tweaks that they've made. The big question is staying healthy, and will we see an explosive run game to come together for SMU? And with that run game, SMU does have Brashard Smith as a newcomer. Derek McFall's been suited up for the first time this fall camp. He's now on campus. He wasn't here in the spring. He's a true freshman that has shown some really nice juice. He had a nice run if you were watching earlier in the podcast. Jalen Knighton, LJ Johnson, those are your two top backs. Brashard Smith is probably right there with Jalen Knighton, I would say. They're similar in terms of their explosiveness when healthy. And Kamar Wheaton's been sitting out some for practice and not really expecting him to be back just yet. So with that, you're looking at a chance for LJ Johnson to, number one, take this running back position and absolutely take it by the horns and own it. And he's got the best combination of size and power on the team. He's shown that through practice so far. And he can basically be out there all three downs. Now, SMU's not going to do that. That's just not their style. That's not their MO. They want to get Jalen Knighton out there and involve him in the pass game. They want to get Brashard Smith out there and involve him in the pass game. And talk about guys that are explosive. Brashard Smith is that, and he's got it in spades. So I like the running back group. It's another group that kind of has to show me, but there's just not many changes there. Even bringing in Brashard Smith, having a true freshman in Derek McFall, you don't have these massive changes. So by the way, as an aside, the freshman class for SMU, if you look at who they brought in, Tyler Aronson, Derek McFall, Randy Reese, King Large, Graham Uter, Brandon Booker, Zach Smith, Alex Rogers, Speedy Nettles, Jalen Moses as safety, they really did a nice job. Smaller class, they basically kind of stopped once they realized they were getting into the ACC. They flipped Brandon Booker late. They got Derek McFall. They were able to kind of hit on a couple guys late, but it's a smaller class, and they're all guys that they got a chance. And, I mean, there's some really special players out there that are going to be good for SMU for a long time. King Large and Graham Uter are both looking the part early on the offensive line. Tyler Aronson, I think, looks a little bit more comfortable than he did in the spring and has stepped up. But Derek McFall on the offensive side, he's going to be something now. And if another running back goes down, he's going to be pressed into action, and he's going to have an opportunity, along with Zane Minor's former walk-on, to make some noise this year for the Mustangs. So I think as you look at the passing game, I think the wide receiver group has really taken a lot of things personally. Romello Brinson had a terrific summer. I was talking with a source considered one of the best route runners on the team now. I don't know if last year we could have said that as much, especially the outside guys. Roger Daniels, Jake Bailey look really solid in the slot. They have certainly seen an elevation in Keyshawn Smith and Jordan Hudson's game as well. But if you get a freaky, bouncy athlete like Romello Brinson to be that dude for you, things are looking up in the passing game. And you have RJ Maryland, the star tight end. You have Matthew Hibner, the Michigan transfer, who looks like he's really hit. You saw his one-handed catch if you were watching on YouTube earlier to kick off the one-on-one tape. I'll play it again here because it was just so good. But he's really outperformed expectations for SMU so far since arriving from Michigan. He brings a national championship pedigree. And, I mean, they have weapons. They have them. It is, will there be a little bit more of a dialed in rotation in terms of if one or two guys emerge, are they going to ride those guys like we've seen in the past at SMU with a bona fide 1,000-yard receiver, with a bona fide 10-plus touchdown guy, or is it going to be by committee again? And that's an interesting question for Rhett Lashley and his staff to probably have to tackle there because they do have a lot of good options that they can certainly get themselves through the season with, but you'd like to see somebody emerge as like a 1,200, 12 touchdown type of player. And I'm sure you can grab Romello Brinson at a pretty good price, so to speak, if you dabble in those sorts of preseason lines. I don't know where you could find it, but Romello Brinson would be a good pick to maybe emerge as a potential household name for SMU fans. Before we dive into the quarterbacks, I want to remind you guys about statusjet.com. Again, was talking with David Henry and his team. Reach out to them at statusjet.com. Find the option for you when it comes to your game day experience. Again, you're looking at trips that range anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000. For 6 people, they might be able to find different avenues that obviously tweak the price and tweak your overall costs, but these prices are preliminary estimates and they can change based on fuel and aircraft availability and scheduling changes and things like that. But when you have the chance to fly like this for a game day, it's pretty special. And if you're looking to make a trip memorable, reach out to StatusJet today and talk with them about the prices. But it is a sticker shock if you've never flown private and paid for it, which I have not. But it is when you do it with a group, and if you do it the right way through StatusJet, maybe it is worth it. If you can go in and out on the same day, you're looking at a nice opportunity to save on hotel rooms. If you're even considering this, that means maybe saving $1,000 on a hotel room night or two, depending on where you were going to go. If you were going to fly first class out to Virginia and Charlottesville, I was looking the other day and I didn't do much research, but that's a tough trip for SMU fans to make, going Dallas to Charlottesville. And I don't know. I'll look right now, but I don't see many direct flights there to Charlottesville. So good opportunity for all of our friends to reach out to StatusJet. Yeah, Google says no direct flights into Charlottesville. So instead of finding your way there through a connection and dealing with that, or maybe flying into the DC area and driving, go direct through Status Jet. You'd save on a rental car potentially, and you can just get off the plane, go right to the stadium, and fly right back. So again, there's something to that. And if time is, very important to you, what better way to figure out a way to save, in a sense, in the grand scheme of things, than flying with our friends at Status Jet. So reach out to them today to get a quote and just start the conversation. Maybe it makes sense for you and your family and friends to use that route for your game days. With SMU football, there's always a buzz around the quarterback position. SMU's had some really impressive signal callers come through here, especially in the last really 2 decades. And this is probably the most intriguing year that I've covered, because you go through a lot of the quarterback situations that I've covered at SMU, and Garrett Gilbert was there when I was in school, and you have your Ben Hicks time, and the Will Brown moments, and the DJ Gillens, and all sorts of different guys that have tried their hand. Rafe Peavy, and Matt Davis, and obviously we've gone through Shane Buechele, friend of the show. That wasn't much of a competition when Shane came in here. There is a duo on campus that is going to be pretty good for SMU, and has led them to a championship, and that's Preston Stone and Kevin Jennings. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. They're in a competition. And I'm not sitting here writing stories like, what's the latest on the quarterback battle, who's going to start, and trying to grab attention and subscriptions with that. But what I can tell you is they're in a competition, and they really show each day at various moments why one should be the starter over the other. And that's what happens when you get experience, you get exposure to their styles of play, you get all of those things. And for me, watching them run through practice, they're 2 really talented quarterbacks with 2 very different styles, but only one could play. And that's the quarterback position for you. And I still believe that Preston Stone is going to start game 1 against Nevada. And he deserves that, in my opinion. Now, Rhett Lashley and his staff see everything. They get every angle. They see every snap of practice. We have not gotten that at this point. What I can say, too, about Kevin Jennings is he put an incredible amount of work in to readying himself to be the guy this year. Now, he still makes mistakes, like throwing into coverage and doing some of those things that Preston did before he got experience. And he really dialed that back in the back half of last season. And Preston Stone went from, I think he had a turnover in just about every game. I think he had at least 1 turnover in every game. I want to say through the first 6, maybe even 7. And dialed that back late in the season. It really changed everything for this offense. And maybe Kevin Jennings can do that if he got more experience. These 2 are pushing each other, and they both look like starters to be. And I know that's kind of a cop-out, but I already said that I think Preston starts game 1. But this is not a team, and I was talking to somebody else about this the other day. I said, this is not a team that can wait around to find out if one of them is the guy, or if Preston Stone is the guy if he gets the ball in game 1. Because there's too much invested in NIL. There's too much invested in this first year. There's too much experience on this team to sit around and say, all right, well, it's Preston's first year. We've got 4 non-conference games. At the end of the day, we need to win every single one of our conference games, and that's what matters. Yes, if SMU goes 0-4 in non-conference play and then wins the ACC, they're going to the college football playoff. Then they're going to probably have to go undefeated in ACC play to do that anyway. But that's not what this team is about. This team, as their expectations say, and as their phrase of fall camp and of the offseason is raise it. And there's pressure on Preston Stone. And there's more pressure this year than last year because, one, yes, you're going to the ACC. People are saying, okay, well, if SMU goes 7-5, that's pretty cool, whatever. They'll be fine. That was a good first year in the ACC. But at the end of the day, Preston has the experience. Preston has the talent to lead this team to bigger heights. If early in the season he struggles and SMU loses one of two to BYU, TCU, or loses both, that is probably going to come back to quarterback play. When you look at last year's game against TCU, not Preston's best. When you look at last year's game against OU, he had some really special moments, was definitely learning and missed some opportunities there. But there's no time this year to wait around, and this is for Rhett Lashley and his staff as well. There's no time to wait around and say, all right, he's got as long of a leash as he needs because he's learning. Kevin still needs to learn more. No, now it is these two are the guys. They're leaders. They were both at ACC Media Days. They both have talent. And if something doesn't look right, doesn't mean they should be looking over their shoulder every second of every day. But if there's a change that ultimately needs to be made for the betterment of the team, that plug, that pull on that plug might be a little tighter to start this year. But I think Preston, from talking with him, he's as healthy as he's been. He looks good out there just physically. And again, a lot of this won't be solved until the season because there is so much pressure on these quarterbacks from the defensive line. It's really hard to kind of grasp unless you've been out there for a full practice. They will both have wow moments. They will both have moments that you just shake your head and you're thinking that just isn't it and what this team needs. So the quarterback position, again, we only get the first 6 periods of practice, and a lot of that is special teams. We get a little team tempo, so we basically get to see 3 or 4 reps a quarterback, and then we're out. We're off to our little areas to work on our practice footage and practice reports and all of that. You can't go wrong. If Rhett Lashley woke up the week of the Nevada game and said, I'm going to start Kevin Jennings, probably not a wrong answer. And if he woke up and was like, Preston's still the guy, we're rocking with him, that makes a ton of sense too. But this quarterback room is now in a position where they shouldn't be given much slack. They've both played too many games. They've both played and gotten enough experience where the pressure should be on them. And it's about how they deal with it, not only in fall camp in this competition that they're in, which they are in a competition, but how they deal with it in the games. And when the lights come on August 24th against a Nevada team that will be excited. New head coach Jeff Choate. We'll get into some of that. We're going to try to have somebody on to preview the Nevada game. But you can't get into that first game on the road and you play timid because you're worried about making a mistake, or you think you can do whatever you want because it's Nevada and they have a new coaching staff and they were a bad football team last year. You have to play within this offense, and this offense has enough tools to be successful. They have to put it all together. It's still an offense that, when you look at last year, beat up on a lot of poor competition, and they had some good moments against bad defenses. And they had some success against teams that were rather good. But I would say that the next step is doing the little things consistently to be that Rhett Lashley offense that we know against an ACC schedule should be one of the best in the country. Last year against a poor AAC was one of the best in the country from a total points and yards per game and all of those things. This is the test of where this offense is at, navigating the Power 5 ranks, Power 4. I'm confident in the defense. I'm confident in Rhett Lashley and his staff to put together good plans and to play the best players no matter what. And I think this year more than any year, they can again go back to everybody's gotten experience. Running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, most of the offensive line, everyone's been here. It's not a time to wait. And I know I got into a season tangent on quarterbacks, but we just don't get to see too much of them in fall camp. They both look the part. They both look like they're throwing the ball well. Kevin's got great velocity. Preston has all the throws in his bag that he needs to be able to make. It's just a matter of who really can take this offense from a good AAC offense into a good ACC offense. Because if SMU gets good on offense with the expectations that are there for this defense, it has a chance to be a great year for the Mustangs. If they get good on defense and great on offense, I could still see 8-4. 9-3 is probable. But if you get good on offense and great on defense, you're looking at a team that, could end up in Charlotte. They would probably need some help. I don't know if good on offense and great on defense is going to get you past Florida State still, but it'll get you pretty close. So with that, guys, we've got to wrap up a little bit with recruiting. Couple notes here. SMU has been able to, this is a nice part, and I've said this now to a couple of people. I wish SMU played week 0 every year. Sign me up, because gets you into fall camp earlier. And next year it won't matter, actually. So I take this back, but I do like it from the fall because I enjoy watching college football and doing what I do. I don't necessarily get to sit around and watch it all day. We're either, headed to the boulevard to, see friends and things like that, or we're doing other things that don't involve college football on our Saturdays when SMU might have been away and things like that. Now we've got Jack. And the week 0 game for SMU gives you another off weekend, in a sense, in the rest of my season, that we can either go do something or whatever, kind of take a break. But SMU has been able to benefit from this in the sense that players can come out, high school prospects, and watch practice. And we have all the scoop at ontheponyexpress.com. I encourage you guys to subscribe to the site and read our articles on recruiting, on team. We're actually going to have a bunch of basketball coverage too. I was lucky enough to go out to practice and watch the Mustangs under Andy Enfield get some work in. Can't share too much because it's off-season stuff, but really enjoyed it. And it gave me a better understanding, I think, of what SMU has coming for the ACC. But back to football, the football team was able to host some of their top targets. We broke that down on theponyexpress.com. The big prospect that we are all watching right now is what's going to happen with Zay Gentry, the Anna High cornerback who just transferred in from McKinney High School. He's been committed to SMU since May. You see right there the Wisconsin flip pick, which I don't know how I'm going to approach flip picks from now on, but I had an SMU pick in. It paid off. 2 months later, since his commitment now, he's still committed to SMU. We went through a phase where Wisconsin was viewed as the team to beat, and they were going to flip him. They haven't yet. I guess they still could. Baylor is the one that is picking up steam. I guess the only right answer for me to potentially get this right, since I now have a loss and I can't predict that he'll just stick again, is to put a Baylor flip pick in, because that is a school with some buzz around it. Now, SMU's had Zay Gentry on campus 2 times this week. So I'm really intrigued to see what happens with Zay Gentry. He's at least saying and doing all the right things, but there's a lot of buzz around what the Bears are doing with NIL and their high school recruiting class, which has been a little bit of a thorn in the side of SMU and their push for what, quite frankly, would be a top 25 or would be a top probably 15 class. SMU's in the top 25 already, but if SMU is able to beat out Baylor for some of the guys that Baylor got, probably be a top 15 class. But the Bears are pressing for Zay Gentry, and we will see. But as of right now, he's saying and doing all the right things, which is showing up to practice to watch the Mustangs. Brought some of his teammates as well this week to watch the Mustangs get some work in. So, gosh, with that, hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. We will do an insider on fall camp, breaking down the depth chart as well, going in depth. So be sure to look out for that for our On the Pony Express subscribers and our YouTube subscribers as well. We're going to start bringing that stuff back. So really hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast, and I will catch you guys probably next week, we'll get back onto 2 podcasts a week, breaking down fall camp and recruiting and all things SMU. So hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and we'll catch you next time with another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on3 and on Instagram at on3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.